Hey, what's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome to the first episode of the week of Eagles Latest. I'm your host, Cory Nidoh, and we're going to get right to it because, again, all week long we are going to be keeping our eyes on who is interviewing for the vacant offensive coordinator job for the Philadelphia Eagles. And there's been some interviews that have taken place. There are some new names that are being added or have already spoken with the Eagles. So I want to get you up to date with some of the latest news regarding the OC position because it's going to be a bit of a process. Now, when they hired Kellen Moore a couple years ago, last year really, it was not that long. It was only a 4-day process, but we are certainly past that, obviously, as it's been a full week since the Eagles have last played a football game, and they're doing their due diligence. There's been reports that came out over the weekend and late last week that they were talking or requesting interview permissions with other coaches. So we're going to get through some of them right now. First off, Zach Robinson, the former offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons. He interviewed with Philadelphia, according to ESPN's Adam Schefter. Seemed like there's not a whole lot of traction or support behind Zach Robinson. Obviously, he led the Falcons offense that looked good at times with Bijan Robinson and obviously Tyler Algier. They obviously have Kyle Pitts as well, Drake London. They had some nice pieces, but a little bit of an inconsistent offensive performance by the Falcons. And I don't know if he's really on the top of the list, even for the Eagles, but he nonetheless interviewed for the position. They also interviewed former Giants offensive coordinator and interim head coach Mike Kafka. That's per Jeremy Fowler. Another guy who was a quarterback in the league, just couldn't really hack it, but he has been really solid as a coach. He's well respected. Obviously, the Giants saw highly enough of him to make him their interim head coach, but now, of course, they are in agreement with John Harbaugh, and it will be interesting to see if Harbaugh brings one of my top two candidates in Todd Monken. I think Monken could be a really good fit for the Eagles, but he's already interviewing for different coaching jobs, and it's more than likely that maybe he follows John Harbaugh to New York and remains the OC for the former longtime Ravens head man. Moving forward, Jim Bob Cooter was added to the list, and he is going to be interviewed as we talk about some new names that were added to the Eagles wish list here. Again, they're doing their due diligence. It's going to be quite the process here for Philadelphia. Howie Roseman, Jeffrey Lurie, Nick Sirianni and company, they're all going to be in the conversation here because they want to make sure that they get this right. Now, Jim Bob Cooter could be an interesting potential hire for the Eagles. This is from Mike Garafolo. Jim Bob Cooter most recently spent the past season as the offensive coordinator for the Colts. He's actually held that position since 2023. Obviously, some crossover with Shane Steichen, and of course the connection with the Eagles and Steichen as he helped them get them to the Super Bowl. Prior to that, he was the passing game coordinator for the Jaguars, and he also already worked with Philadelphia back in 2021 as an offensive consultant. So this is a guy who's been in the building. He's been on the staff already with Nick Sirianni, and he was an independent consultant for the Eagles, and the two of them, him and Sirianni, spent time together in Kansas City back in 2012, and maybe they have a reconnection there. We'll see, but he is added to the list as they have included him on the list of granting permission for an interview. Now, if you look at what the Colts did this past year, they were on a historic pace offensively before they were absolutely decimated by injuries. Daniel Jones was looking his best in his career. Obviously, Jonathan Taylor has been fantastic, one of the top running backs over the last couple of years. He did set a career high in rushing yards this year, rushing for over 1,500 yards this season, which surpasses his previous best that he set last year, which was over 1,400. So there's certainly something clicking there for Jim Bob Cooter and the offensive line and the offensive scheme there, and it could translate well for the Philadelphia Eagles, as that's going to be one of their biggest priorities, I think, is to how do they get this running game back on track. Obviously, Saquon Barkley had that historic 2,000-yard rushing season in 24. This season, nearly half of his carries, he was being hit behind the line of scrimmage with the offense that was dinged up and injured and just didn't play at a consistent level. So the familiarity there certainly makes JBC a little bit of a more intriguing prospect for an offensive coordinator to fill the shoes of Kevin Patullo. Obviously, you've got Mike McDaniel waiting in the wings. He is going to be interviewed at some point. Obviously, Brian Daboll is also going to be in the mix, the former Giant head coach, but also recently added to the list. Late last night, Adam Schefter did report that the Eagles also requested to interview Miami Dolphins senior passing game coordinator Bobby Slowick for the OC position. Obviously, Slowick coached alongside McDaniel in Miami. His calling card really was his ability to get C.J. Stroud to put up a fantastic season back in 2023. Stroud won the Rookie of the Year that season. He also was in the MVP discussion. And then prior to that, he coached under Kyle Shanahan for the 49ers from 2017 to 2022. So he is a Kyle Shanahan disciple. And then he was able to pick the brain of Mike McDaniel. And we know how explosive McDaniel's offense can be with a lot of the motion, the screens, the misdirection. So maybe the Eagles are getting Slowick's kind of idea of what he wants to do. Does he want to be back in as an OC? Does he want to just kind of be a passing coordinator? We'll see what happens, because maybe if they go with Mike McDaniel, then Slowick will come by and join McDaniel on the staff, which could be a nice combo there for the Philadelphia Eagles. And also, maybe if they do call Slowick and decide that he's the guy for them, well, then maybe he sticks around and he's not really looking for a head coaching job right away, whereas maybe Mike McDaniel, he stays for a year, maybe two, and then he wants to get back to making a lot more money, obviously, as a head coach. But a quick synopsis of Slowick's career. As I mentioned, he was the senior passing game coordinator for the Miami Dolphins. He still is. He was the OC for Houston prior, and then he spent the majority of his career with the 49ers, as I mentioned, got his start as a defensive assistant with Washington back in 2011 to 2013. He's only 38 years old, so he's a young mind, pass first kind of guy. He is somewhat local, native of Princeton, New Jersey, so you've got some ties there as well. And he was just recently added to the list of candidates that will possibly interview for the Eagles, as the Dolphins will have to grant permission for Philadelphia to be able to talk to him. So again, a lot of names circulating. There's still plenty of interviews to take place. There's plenty of time for things to happen, but I do think the Eagles would want to wrap this up sooner than later. There are some names that are coming off the board. Kevin Stefanski, another guy on my list. I thought he would have been a fantastic fit. We talked about him in one of our previous episodes. A Philadelphia guy through and through, born and raised, went to St. Joe's Prep, went to the University of Penn, and then had a cup of coffee in the Eagles as an intern, and then really has become one of the premier coaches in the league, a two-time Coach of the Year with Cleveland, which is not easy to do. But he did just agree to terms to become the new Atlanta head coach. So Stefanski is off the board. And as I mentioned earlier, Monken more than likely will not be with the Eagles, or maybe not even interview with Philadelphia. He is getting some head coaching interest, and of course, he can always fall back and join his longtime buddy in John Harbaugh as they take over that New York Giants offense that could be pretty scary with Jackson Dart, Cam Scatterbo, and then when Malik Neighbors comes back, they've got a nice trio there on the offensive side to build around. That is for sure, but we'll see how everything pans out. But those are two guys that one's definitely off the list, and one is more than likely not going to be around for the Eagles to choose. Last but not least, the Eagles did re-sign one of their coaches, special teams coach Michael Clay. His contract was up at the end of the month, and he was a highly sought-after coach. There's belief around the league that he was going to demand quite the attention in terms of getting some interviews, and the Eagles did not want to lose Michael Clay, so they did agree to extend his contract. That was according to NFL Mike Garafolo, who reported that earlier yesterday. But it's interesting to see how one would break down Clay's performance because, as you know, over the last 2 years, maybe you're not sure, this kickoff return game just has not been it for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, this year, they were just kind of trying to throw stuff at a wall and see if it would stick until they finally brought Britton Covey up, and he kind of provided a little bit of a spark. But, you had Tank Bigsby back there returning kicks, and he struggled mightily. Jahan Dotson was back there, Will Shipley, and that has been a problem for the Eagles. They were dead last in kickoff EPA this season, and they were 31st a year ago, or 2 years ago, technically. So that is certainly something that you want to keep an eye out for, and how Clay can try and develop a better blocking and return game for the Eagles to use that as a weapon. Now, on the flip side of that, the Eagles did win some games because of special teams. Obviously, Jordan Davis's blocked field goal against the Rams back in September, that sealed the deal for the Eagles, and that wild come-from-behind victory over Los Angeles. Obviously, Jordan Davis also blocked an extra point, and that was in the Buffalo Bills game, and that helped them win the game as well. And then there were some other decisions that he made that actually helped the Eagles come up with some big fourth down stops and kind of change the complexion of some games. But with that said, I think that the Eagles are going to want to see some type of improvement. Maybe they even improve the personnel as well. Britton Covey, a solid return man, but they haven't really had a home run hitting return man on the kick return or even the punt return over the last couple of seasons. So we will see how that pans out, but the Eagles do retain one of their coaches in Michael Clay, and he will be on the staff next season. So there's a lot to just keep your eyes out for. I will certainly keep you up to date as the week progresses. Again, there's some interviews that are scheduled, some interviews that are being waited to be granted access and approval for, but the Eagles certainly want to make sure that they make this decision properly, because it's kind of a pivot point here for this franchise. You heard it from Howie Roseman at the end of the season postseason press conference. They are in a window to win now. And I thought one of the more telling things he said was, if we have to continuously change offensive coordinators year in and year out because we're playing so well and we're going to the Super Bowl, we're winning Super Bowls, that's something that they will deal with and not worried about it. So this is a GM that is hungry to win. He's been building this roster over the last few seasons to sustain a dynastic run, and this seems like it was just a wasted year for the Philadelphia Eagles with how good that defense played for most of the season. And obviously the first and foremost issue that they need to correct is the offense, because they have way too much talent, way too much money tied in on that side of the ball to be one of the worst offenses in the league like they were this season. So keep your eyes open. As I mentioned, I think Monken would have been a great choice. Stefanski would have been a great choice. Those were like two of my top 3-4 guys that are now off the board. I do think Mike McDaniel still could be really electric here in Philadelphia with his offense. And I think the Eagles kind of just need to scrap this Nick Sirianni offense and game plan and just go with something new and fresh. And I think the players could respond to that well also. Now, it's going to be a lot to learn a new playbook, but they have all offseason to do so. And you heard Devontae Smith say it after the loss against the Niners. We've been running the same scheme for the last 3-4 years. Well, now it's time for the Eagles to adjust, because the league certainly has adjusted a bit to them, especially this season. So let me know who you want to be the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. Is it Mike McDaniel? Is it Brian Daboll with his connection with Sirianni, Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley? He really makes a lot of sense too as well. I know there are some people worried about how Sirianni and Daboll will clash on the sideline, or mesh, I should say. I'm slightly concerned about that, but if you look at it, both coaches really haven't gotten into it with coaches. It's more so they're fiery towards their players. They want their guys to be giving 110%. So it could work really well. Nick Sirianni was very complimentary of Daboll. There's some great articles out there that you can read about their time together almost a decade ago, if not, it is over a decade ago, when they were with Kansas City and Daboll was the offensive coordinator there for the Chiefs. So there's some really solid possibilities there, and that was what I mentioned. The silver lining of getting knocked out early is that you do have a chance to secure one of the more coveted offensive coordinators in the league. Obviously, Cliff Kingsbury is out there. I know some are a little 50-50 on him, but there are still some really talented coaches and offensive minds that are available, and I think they have to make the right choice because we're going to talk about it a little bit in tomorrow's episode, but that A.J. Brown situation, there's a lot of people in the industry that believe that he's not going to be on the Eagles next season, but if they do hire the right offensive coordinator, they could bring him in. They could bring A.J. Brown in and say, hey, this is our vision for the offense moving forward. This is how you're going to be involved, and see if that maybe calms A.J. down a little bit. He obviously aired his frustrations, and we'll talk about that tomorrow a bit more, but I think that can also alleviate another problem if they hire the right offensive coordinator, not only for A.J. Brown, of course, for the entire team, but I do think that would certainly be a helping cause there to retain and maintain a healthy relationship with their star wide receiver. So that would just about do it for this episode of Eagles Latest on FanArch. As always, I thank you so much for tuning in. Please make sure you subscribe, drop a like, and again, drop a comment. Let me know, who do you want as the Eagles offensive coordinator? We'll talk to you tomorrow.